Commander Star stood tall on the command bridge of the Imperial enforcement vessel Dominant Will, his four pupils narrowing as he studied the tactical projection hovering in front of him. The longer he examined the data, the more his irritation simmered. Humanity, an upstart species with barely half a century in the galactic community, had once again managed to challenge the order that the Verithian Empire had maintained for thousands of years. For 30 centuries, the Empire had enforced stability across a domain of 10,000 star systems. Newly uplifted civilizations followed the codes. They respected boundaries. They advanced slowly and cautiously, supervised every step of the way. Then the humans arrived, restless, industrious, stubborn, and almost aggressively confident. "Commander," his second officer chirped, the shifting gleam of her scales revealing unease. The unauthorized construction in the Sol system remains active. They've ignored every formal order to halt operations. Star's tail twitched with frustration. Only humans would insist their project was legal after receiving 6 warnings. With a sharp gesture, he expanded the report. Enormous energy signatures radiated from Earth's orbital region, far exceeding the output of any Class D species. "What is their current classification?" he asked, though the answer resurfaced in his mind instantly. "Class D, Commander. They are permitted Corvette-class vessels only. Hull length limit, 200 meters. Advanced military construction is prohibited for at least 500 cycles." Exactly the issue. Class D civilizations were expected to take baby steps into interstellar capabilities. The Empire granted privileges slowly, after proving responsibility, compliance, and predictable behavior. Human behavior, Star had learned, was not predictable. "Begin assembly of an enforcement squadron," he ordered. 12 cruisers. "We will conduct an in-person inspection." "Yes, Commander." His second officer hesitated. Human diplomatic channels continue transmitting requests. They insist the project is authorized. They always insist. Star's mandibles clicked with annoyance. "But explanations will be heard on our terms." The 3-day FTL transit gave Star ample time to reread everything in their database regarding humanity. The files were thin, but what was recorded already raised concerns. Humans were mammalian bipeds originating from a mid-sized terrestrial world called Earth. Their technological advancement was rapid. Too rapid. In a mere 50 years, they had remade nearly every corner of their home system with stations, refineries, orbital factories, automated mining drones, and shipyards. They expanded like a species racing against an unseen clock. Ambassador Chun, a human with an unervingly calm smile, had sent repeated messages insisting the structure under construction was a generation ship meant for peaceful, long-range civilian exploration. Star doubted that deeply. When the Dominant Will and its squadron emerged from FTL at the system's outer boundary, sensor sweeps immediately locked onto dozens of human vessels. None were threatening. Small transports, shuttles, cargo craft, survey skimmers. All appropriate for their classification. But then the primary skin highlighted an object near Earth's orbit. The sensor officer froze. "Commander, you should see this personally." Star strode forward and his breath stalled. Dominating the orbital vista was a colossal structure, unfinished yet already dwarfing every known starship in the Empire's registry. "How large?" he demanded. "Current length, 15 kilometers, Commander. Based on structural projections, final length will be approximately 16. 15 kilometers. Star felt a cold weight settle in his chest. For comparison, the Empire's largest dreadnought barely exceeded 5 kilometers. Even their supercapital ships never approached such scale. Scan for armaments. Minutes passed. Each sensor sweep returned the same baffling result. "Commander," the sensor officer said carefully, "I detect 0 weapon systems. No plasma batteries, no torpedo arrays, no energy cannons. Nothing." The Star stared. "Scan again." Multiple scans. Multiple confirmations. What the humans were building had no weapons, but its power readings were immense. Industrial reactors thrummed like captured stars. Machinery large enough to process moons sat embedded in its superstructure. "What is this thing?" the Star murmured. "Based on configuration, the officer replied. It resembles a mobile industrial megastructure. Mining arrays, refinery stacks, fabrication lines, on a scale we've never documented. Star made his decision instantly. Move the squadron into close formation. Prepare boarding teams. We will inspect this construct personally. The cruisers adjusted course, gliding toward the giant human-made behemoth. Star's expression hardened. Whatever the humans were building, he would uncover the truth. The 12 Erythian cruisers advanced in a tight, disciplined formation, their metallic hulls reflecting the faint light of the Soul Star. Human vessels scattered out of the squadron's path, giving the Imperial warships the same wide-berth prey gives a predator. The Star found that reassuring. At least humans understood the meaning of authority. But the structure looming ahead did not behave like prey. It hung in Earth orbit like an artificial moon, its unfinished plating leaving vast sections of superstructure exposed. Hundreds of human engineers and exosuits floated along its exterior, welding, installing massive components, or guiding cargo drones that ferry materials the size of Imperial shuttles. Even half complete, the vessel radiated power. "Hail them!" Star ordered. A moment later, a human woman appeared on the bridge's main display. The Star recognized her from the diplomatic transmissions. Captain, no. She had introduced herself as Chief Engineer, Sarah Chun. "Commander Star," she greeted, her expression neutral but courteous. "Welcome to Earth. How may we assist you?" Assist, as if the Empire had arrived to ask for a tour. Star straightened. "Captain Chun, I am here to investigate your unauthorized megastructure. Construction is to cease immediately. Imperial protocol requires full inspection before any continuation." Chin didn't flinch. "With respect, Commander, the project is authorized. This vessel, the Unbreakable Labor, is a civilian-generation ship. Its purpose is deep space colonization. We've submitted all relevant documentation." Star flexes lower mandibles. "A generation ship does not require a 15-kilometer hull." Chin shrugged. "Humans had a remarkable ability to be casual at the worst possible time. It does when the journey is expected to span 1,000 years and house 15,000 civilians. We need living space, production facilities, hydroponics, recycling systems, and raw material storage. It's essentially a mobile ecosystem." Her voice carried no deceit. That was what bothered Star most. "Power down your systems," he said. "My boarding teams will perform a thorough inspection." Chun hesitated for the first time. "Only for an instant. We can power down most functions, Commander, but the reactor requires minimal output for safety. We'll suspend all construction and open our airlocks of your teams." "Acceptable." Star gestured to his officers. "Prepare the boarding shuttles." As his crews launched toward the human construct, Star remained at the tactical display. Something about the hull bothered him. It was far thicker than any vessel, civilian or military, had any right to be. The layers of exotic plating, the density readings, the strange energy-absorbing properties. "Science officer," he said sharply, "identify the hull composition." The officer's frills stiffened. "Commander, analysis indicates compressed neutronium composite, layered with carbon lattice reinforcement." Star froze. "Neutronium? That material is theoretical. No species has ever stabilized it. Humans have," the officer said softly. "It appears to be a standard part of their heavy industry." The commander's pulse spiked. What possible use could they have for hull plating this strong? "Deep stellar harvesting," the science officer replied. "Data suggests humans use similar plating for mining operations within star coronas and extreme pressure zones." The Star stared at him. "They mine inside stars." "Yes, Commander." Before Star could respond, alarms chirped. "Commander!" the sensor officer shouted. Energy spiked from the human construct. Star's eyes widened. "Shields up. Defensive formation. Prepare." "Commander!" The officer raised both hands. "They are not targeting us. It's a system reset. Their reactor is cycling the baseline." Moments later, Captain Chen reappeared on screen, looking mildly apologetic. "Commander, our reactor runs a bit hot during power transitions. Nothing to worry about." Nothing to worry about? The energy surge had momentarily outclassed his entire squadron. How powerful is your reactor? Star asked slowly. Chin didn't seem to realize the gravity of the question. A contained microstar system, the only reactor type capable of supporting full-scale industrial operations for a ship this size. A contained star in a civilian vessel. Star felt his heart stutter. His boarding teams entered the megastructure and began transmitting preliminary reports. None of them were reassuring. No weapons found. No military systems installed. Every piece of equipment vastly outclassed Imperial equivalents. And all of it was considered normal industrial design by humans. 6 hours passed. The deeper the teams explored, the more Star's unease grew. The unbreakable labor was not a warship, but it didn't need to be. It was a weapon disguised as a job site. Star stared at the colossal silhouette filling his forward viewport. A civilian ship that could survive inside a star. A civilian ship that could outpower an entire fleet. A civilian ship strong enough to dismantle a planet. A civilian ship that humans casually called Standard. And in that moment, Star felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear. The inspection teams returned one shuttle at a time, each with increasingly disturbing reports. Commander Star read them in silence, mandibles tightening with every paragraph. The humans had not constructed a secret dreadnought. They had done something far worse. They had built a vessel that outperformed a dreadnought without trying. The chief engineer from the inspection squad finally arrived on the bridge, scales pale with disbelief. "Commander," she began, "I've inspected the outer hull with every scanning tool at our disposal. Our weaponry wouldn't even scorch the surface. This ship is built to endure pressures and temperatures far beyond any battlefield scenario." Star didn't look up from the datapad. Summarize. The hull can survive immersion in stellar plasma for extended periods. It can withstand atmospheric pressures equivalent to the deepest layers of a gas giant. And the structural integrity? "Commander, this vessel could physically push through an asteroid without taking damage." Star exhaled slowly. "And they insist this is civilian." "It is," she admitted. "Every system is industrial, just catastrophically overpowered." Before Star could respond, a transmission alert pulsed. High Command was requesting his report. He activated the channel. The holographic visage of Admiral Voxlon materialized, stern and expectant. "Commander Star," the Admiral said, "we await your findings." Star glanced once more at the looming silhouette of the human megaship outside his viewport. "Admiral, the human structure is confirmed to be a civilian vessel." The Admiral's scales shifted subtly. "Civilian? Commander, its dimensions exceed our greatest warships." "That is correct," Star replied, voice low, "and that is not the real problem." He transmitted the inspection data. Readouts, density charts, power signatures, everything the teams had gathered. Admiral Voxlon's expression froze in place as he skimmed the reports. "Commander," the Admiral said slowly, "are you telling me this human mining ship has hull strength 40 times greater than our capital armor?" "Yes, Admiral. And its reactor output surpasses the yield of our primary dreadnought fleet?" "Yes, Admiral." Silence. "Explain how this is possible." Star spread his hands helplessly. "It appears humans do not understand moderation. Their ships are built for danger we cannot even conceptualize. They don't design for war. They design to avoid workplace casualties. And their workplace includes environments we would classify as certain death." Admiral Voxlon leaned closer to the display. "How many of these vessels exist?" 46 completed, Star said. 200 more under construction." The Admiral did not move for several long seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice was a quiet rasp. "Commander, the Empire's entire fleet would struggle to defeat even one of them." Star nodded once. "That matches my assessment." The Admiral's voice hardened. "Prepare a weapons test." Star stiffened. "Admiral, we must know the truth. Test your cruiser's armaments against the human hull. Minimal damage should be visible even at low power. If we are fortunate, we will learn their vulnerabilities." The Star hesitated. Firing on a civilian vessel, even with warning, was risky. But High Command rarely requested. They commanded. Understood, Star said. The channel closed. A moment later, he addressed his crew. Weapons officer, prepare a warning shot. Announce intentions to the human captain. The officer complied. Chen appeared on the screen seconds later, eyebrows raised in mild curiosity. Commander Star, she said, is something wrong? We are conducting a weapons calibration, he replied formally. You may observe a plasma discharge. This is not an attack. Understood, Chen replied calmly. Star gave the order. Fire. A pulse of superheated plasma streaked across space and splashed against the unbreakable labor's hull like a raindrop hitting a mountain. No scorch marks. No energy bleed. No structural change. Results? The Star asked. The sensor officer swallowed. Commander, the hull didn't register the impact. Sensors classify the strike as negligible heat interference. The Star forced himself to remain steady. Increase to 50%. Fire again. Another bolt. A brighter impact. Still nothing. Before Star could order the next escalation, the human captain appeared on the screen again, looking almost embarrassed. Commander, Chen said, our sensors detected something, but I'm not sure. Did one of your ships misfire? It looked like a maneuvering thruster pulse. Star's heart sank. Their strongest military plasma cannons had been mistaken for navigation thrusters. Every officer on the bridge felt the weight of that realization. For the first time in decades, Commander Star felt small, terrifyingly, insignificantly small. The atmosphere on the bridge of the Dominant grew unbearably tense. The Star's officers exchanged uneasy glances, colors flickering across their scales in patterns that signaled disbelief and a creeping dread. The human captain's casual misunderstanding of their weapons fired a bolt of cold fear down Star's spine. Their plasma cannons, designed to punch through armored warships, had been mistaken for thrusters. He forced his mandibles into a controlled posture. Weapons officer, he said quietly, prepare the next firing sequence. Full calibration mode. 80% output. His officer hesitated. Commander, shall we inform the humans? No, Star said. We cannot reveal fear. Signal them that the test continues. A moment later, Chen appeared again on screen. Commander, should we reposition? Your last shot passed close to one of our maintenance teams. We will adjust trajectory. Remain stationary, Star replied. Her expression softened with professional courtesy. Understood. Continue your testing. The feed closed. Star gave the order. Fire. 8 cruisers discharged high-output plasma bolts in a synchronized volley. The combined blast illuminated the void with blinding light, the energy washing across the unbreakable labor's hull in a wave of brilliance. When the glare faded, Star stared at the readings. His sensor officer's voice trembled. Commander! Still no measurable structural impact. Hull temperature increased by 0.7 degrees. That is within their acceptable variance. No damage. Star closed his eyes for one long second. The humans hadn't built armor. They had built an impossible wall, one that no known weapon in the Empire could meaningfully touch. Before he could regroup his thoughts, the humans hailed him. Chen's face reappeared, brow slightly furrowed. Commander, your last shot registered as a mild temperature fluctuation. Our outer sensors classified it as thermal noise. Are your weapons functioning properly? Star's second officer stiffened with visible offense. Our weapons function flawlessly. Star raised a hand, silencing her. Captain Chun, our weapons are operating at intended strength. Chun blinked, then frowned delicately as she processed that. Commander, was that your actual firepower? Star's mandibles clicked in frustration. 80% of standard cruiser output. Chin exchanged a glance with someone off-screen, clearly trying to remain diplomatic. Commander, that was extremely low. I assumed it was a diagnostic pulse. I didn't realize that was a full barrage. Star's blood chilled. To them, an 80% plasma blast was a pulse. He forced himself to speak evenly. Captain, we must continue escalation. For scientific verification. Chen's polite expression faltered slightly. Escalation? Commander, our ship is undergoing live construction. We would prefer to avoid unnecessary stress on the hull. Your hull appears more than capable, Star said. Chin exhaled. Very well, but please avoid hitting the hydroponics bay. We only just finished sealing it. Star nodded stiffly. Prepare maximum output. He ordered his weapons officer. All cruisers. Sustain fire. The officer froze. Commander, maximum output may overheat our cannons. Do it. Moments later, the void erupted. 300 seconds of continuous fire. 12 cruisers pouring the full rage of Imperial military engineering into one unarmed civilian vessel. The blast battered the hull with enough force to crack a small moon, and when the test ended, the unbreakable labor drifted peacefully, a faint shimmer of heat radiation, the only sign anything had happened. Star's officers sat in stunned silence. The sensor officer spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. Commander, we have finally detected damage. Star straightened sharply. Show me. A magnified image of the hull appeared. The damage was unmistakable. A slight discoloration. A tiny patch of melted paint. Paint. Star felt his hearts collide in his chest. Commander, the sensor officer continued. Their hull temperature reached 800 degrees at the focal point of the barrage. That is roughly equivalent to the thermal conditions during routine human mining operations. Star stared blankly. 800 degrees, enough to obliterate an Imperial cruiser, was routine. Before he could speak, the humans hailed him again. Chen's face appeared, looking somewhere between confused and apologetic. Commander, our hull coatings are heat-stabilized for sun skimming. If you're trying to test your weapons, you may need a far higher energy level. Star whispered, This is our highest energy level. Chen blinked slowly. Oh. Silence fell. Then she gave a sympathetic wince. Well, that explains why we didn't feel much. Star's vision dimmed for a moment. Their most powerful fleet had just discovered the truth. The Empire wasn't stronger than humanity. It was insignificant next to humanity's engineering. The bridge of the Dominant felt unnaturally quiet, too still, too breathless. The silence was a kind that followed a revelation so overwhelming that no one knew how to process it. Commander Star stood motionless, for eyes fixed on colossal human vessel drifting calmly ahead. The unbreakable labor, despite enduring the strongest barrage the Empire could muster, looked untouched, minus a faint burn mark in its paint. One of his proudest cruisers would have been reduced to slag under half that stress. Before he could gather his composure, the communications console chimed. Captain Chen appeared once again, her expression not triumphant, not mocking, just sincerely puzzled. Commander Star, she said gently, I think we've demonstrated enough. Your weapons don't appear to be calibrated for our hull type. Perhaps we should end the test before your cannons overheat. Star's mandibles twitched. Humans were worried about his ships overheating. Our systems remain functional, he lied. Several consoles behind him were still smoking. Chin smiled politely. Commander, we appreciate the thoroughness of your inspection, but I assure you, our vessel is not a warship. It is simply engineered for extreme environments. Star forced himself to respond. Captain, this ship cannot be destroyed by standard military means. Chun blinked. Well, I certainly hope not. It's meant to protect 15,000 civilians for 1,000 years. If a stray solar flare could crack the hull, we'd all be in trouble. Star's second officer swallowed hard. To the Empire, any ship that could shrug off a combined fleet barrage was considered a superweapon. To the humans, it was simply the minimum acceptable safety standard. Chun continued, Commander, our heavy industry deals with massive hazards. Superheated plasma, microflares, volatile gas extractions, high-pressure fusion environments. We build everything to survive the worst-case scenario. That is not how most species operate. Star said. Chin frowned slightly. Then how do they keep their people alive? Star didn't answer, because in the Empire, the answer was simple. They didn't. Space was cold, unforgiving, dangerous. Acceptable casualties were a part of life. Ships failed. Hulls ruptured. Accidents happened. But humans rejected that reality outright. Star felt the dread take deeper root. They weren't overbuilding out of arrogance. They were overbuilding because they refused to allow death to take root among them. And that philosophy created machines that made warships look fragile. Chin spoke again, drawing Star from his spiraling thoughts. Commander, your fleet's weapons are impressive in their intended context, but they weren't designed for star mining hulls. It's not a fair comparison. Star suppressed a bitter laugh. Captain, your civilian hull surpasses the Empire's most advanced military armor. She looked genuinely surprised. Really? I didn't realize the difference was that large. Star stared at her blankly. Captain, you absorbed 300 seconds of continuous fire from 12 warships and barely noticed. Oh, she said softly. Well, I see how that might be alarming. His second officer whispered, Alarming? Chun gave a sympathetic smile. Commander, humanity doesn't want conflict. We don't want to intimidate anyone. We're just trying to survive the environments we work in. And if the Empire threatened you? Star asked before he could stop himself. Chun frowned. Why would you? We've never harmed anyone. Hypothetically. Chun sighed. Then we do what humans always do. We protect ourselves. But we wouldn't build warships unless we had no other choice. Military engineering isn't our priority. Star's heart thudded heavier at that. If this monstrous industrial titan was not them trying, what would humanity build when they were trying? Chun continued, still unaware of the existential crisis unfolding on his bridge. Commander, if it helps put you at ease, we've never aimed our mining equipment at another species. We use it for asteroids, comets, moons, materials that don't shoot back. Star shuddered. A tool meant to tear moons apart would annihilate fleets by accident. We will file our report, he said, voice subdued. Chin nodded warmly. If you need any additional data for your paperwork, we can provide the full schematics. Transparency is important. Star nearly choked. They were offering schematics of a vessel that could reshape galactic power with ease. Thank you, he managed. We may request them. As the channel closed, the bridge finally erupted into whispers. What do we do? How do we report this? Can we fight them? Star silenced them with a raised hand. We do not fight them, he said quietly. We survive them, and perhaps we befriend them. He turned his gaze back to the unbreakable labor. A mining ship that could laugh off an empire. And humanity had built it with the mindset of safety, not war. That, Star realized, was the most frightening truth of all. The Imperial Council Chamber was a cathedral authority, vast, echoing, and constructed with the sole purpose of reminding every visitor of the Empire's age and power. Holographic banners shimmered overhead, displaying 3,000 years of conquest, order, and dominance. Yet Empress Tal Shara felt none of the pride such symbols were meant to evoke. Instead, a tightly coiled anxiety sat deep in her chest as she replayed Commander Star's full report. 46 operational human megaships, 200 more being assembled, all of them capable of surviving inside a sun, all of them powerful enough to dismantle Imperial vessels without recognizing they were under attack. The Empress addressed the Council, showed the hull density analysis again. A hologram of the unbreakable labor rotated in the air. Data streamed along its contours, densities, thermal thresholds, stress tolerances, gravitational resistance. Numbers so high they bordered on absurdity. Her advisors shifted uneasily. Grand Admiral Voxlon cleared his throat. Your Majesty, I understand Commander Star's caution, but the humans lack military intent. They have demonstrated no aggression. They have demonstrated capability, corrected High Scholar Murtath, activating additional data overlays. Their industrial equipment produces more heat, pressure, and energy than our capital weapons. They do not call them weapons, but they function as such. The Empress leaned forward. How dangerous? Murtath expanded the hologram to show a simulation. An Imperial cruiser approached a human mining vessel. The humans continued mining asteroids, oblivious. A bright beam, one of their industrial lasers, passed across the cruiser as part of routine operations. The cruiser was sliced in half. In that scenario, Mirtha said, assumes the humans never realize they are being attacked. If they did understand the situation. Another simulation loaded. This time, the mining ship reacted to a threat. It used gravitational manipulators to rip open hull plating, then deployed thousands of automated drones that disassembled the cruiser with horrifying precision. The encounter lasted less than a minute. The chamber went silent. Finally, Counselor Felix spoke. Your Majesty, they are dangerous only because they do not realize their own strength. They think of all this as ordinary engineering. That, the Empress murmured, is precisely the danger. She stood. Prepare the Grand Fleet. The council erupted in alarmed whispers. Your Majesty, we cannot fight them. This is madness. The Empress raised one hand. Not for war, for demonstration. Hours later, 300 Imperial warships gathered at the edge of human space. It was the greatest fleet deployment in a century. Admiral Voxlon stood aboard the flagship, reviewing tactical data with a grim expression. When the fleet entered a human-controlled system, the first response came not from a military defense platform, but from a mining supervisor. A cheerful voice crackled over the comms. Hello, this is Tidy Station. Do you all need refueling or something? That's a lot of ships. Admiral Voxlon stared blankly. Humans thought the arrival of the Empire's Grand Armada was a logistics request. Before he could respond, Captain Sarah Chun appeared on the channel. Admiral, we weren't expecting such a large delegation. Do you require docking bays? We can free up some space. Voxlon inhaled slowly. Captain, this is not a courtesy visit. We are here to discuss the implications of your industrial fleet. Chun blinked. Implications? Your ships, Voxlon said, forcing each word, are effectively invulnerable to our weapons. Oh, Chun said, eyes widening. So that's what this is about. She looked genuinely apologetic, almost embarrassed. Admiral, we didn't build them to be intimidating. We built them to keep our people alive. The Admiral stared at her. Captain, your minimum safety standards exceed our maximum military tolerances. Chun frowned. That sounds like a design flaw. Why build ships so fragile? Voxlon nearly choked. The Empress herself soon joined via HoloLink. Negotiations began. Tensions ran high at first, but the humans remained cooperative, almost painfully so. They agreed to transparency, mutual treaties, and technology exchanges without resistance. When formal discussions concluded weeks later, Captain Chin visited the throne world for the signing ceremony. She stood before Empress Talshara in a simple work uniform, unaware that half the imperial court still trembled at the memory of the weapons test. The Empress studied her quietly. Captain, one final question. What would drive humanity to build a warship? Chin thought long and hard. We'd only build one if we believed our species faced extinction or if our allies were in mortal danger. That is reassuring, the Empress said. But Chin wasn't finished. And your Majesty, she added softly, if anyone threatens the Empire now, they threaten us too. For a moment, the chamber fell completely silent. Humans, galactically feared without realizing it, were offering their protection, not because of power, not because of conquest, but because of loyalty. The Empress nodded slowly. Then let this treaty mark the beginning of something new. Outside in orbit, the unbreakable labor drifted. Quiet, colossal, harmless only, because its builders chose it to be harmless. The galaxy, willingly or not, would adapt to the new reality, because humanity had entered the stars, and they built their future the same way they built their ships, unstoppable,